Smiling today, thinking about all the recent changes that have happened. For the last 3 years, I was scared to death of change. I got wrapped up in being comfortable and feeling secure, whatever that actually means, and truly didn't want to fathom what it would be like outside that box. And then after a while, it was finally obvious that I was creating my own hell by doing that. I was missing out on life and all it had to offer me. I was cutting myself off from creation, inspiration, growth, connection. I was preaching self-care, yet at my core, I wasn't practicing it. I was encouraging others to find their truth, but not seeking my own. Since leaving my secure box, I can't even begin to tell you what has happened. It's less safe, but there is freedom. It's less pretty, but there is more space to be held. It's less predictable, but there is more potential to create. It's the beautiful mess that I've been wanting my life to actually be. It's limitless and feels so dang scary good, all at the same time. We don't have the ultimate control in life, and for that I am actually thankful. Letting go of trying to control it all has freed up my energy in ways I didn't even know were possible. I know fear will always be there, trying to talk me out of things, but at least now it feels a little less real. Happy weekend, friends, and thanks to all of you who inspire me to open up to this journey. You make this life beautiful. And with that being read, I want to welcome you back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is a fitness trainer, entrepreneur, content creator, coach, wife, and lover of nature, full moons, adventure, and old souls. Today's guest is Jourdan Baldwin. Jourdan, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Quentin.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jourdan, we're going to jump right into the warm-up. And the first question that I have for you today is, how do you start your day, and is there some sort of morning routine that you follow on most mornings and most days?
This is always a really funny question because I feel like in all of these self-help things that I read, it's like the morning routine is so important, but I start my day at 4 a.m. Every morning, and I've never been a morning person, ever. Even on weekends, I'll sleep till 9 if you give me the chance.
Right.
So I've had to kind of adapt to an early morning schedule because 6 a.m. is consistently my most busy time with clients. So when my alarm goes off at 4 a.m., I kind of lay there and just wonder if this is actually happening.
Is this reality?
Is this really happening?
Right.
And then I slowly get up. I get ready, and my sweet husband, bless his heart, will get up and make breakfast and coffee because no way that I could do it all. There's no deep meditation or deep breaths because it's very early. So it's mostly just about getting up and making sure that I'm in my car at the right time to make it to work. Cool. So typically we have eggs every morning. Got some strong coffee. And I'm in my car, and I leave a little bit early, probably about 5:20 every morning so that I can get to work a little early and then sit in my car and breathe.
There you go.
And that's my time to kind of set my intention for the day, and I'm actually awake and functioning at that point. So I can kind of just sit there for about 15 to 20 minutes, take some deep breaths, be in a space of just true gratitude before I start the day, because otherwise 4 a.m. it's not a state of gratitude, to be honest.
For sure.
And that kind of sets me up to go in and start my first client on a good note, not feeling rushed or exhausted, and that's how I start my day.
Great. Now, I just want to touch on a little bit. So, is there kind of like an evening routine that you have, just to kind of like prepare yourself for the next day, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I'm typically programming workouts. I don't really program workouts at the beginning of the week. I like to do that every night. So I'm kind of getting in a state of mind for what client I have the next day, what their goals are. I'm really intentional about programming for each client.
For sure.
So that's my night routine, and then I also do try to do yoga at least 4 nights a week, and that will help me stay kind of grounded as well.
So the second question, Jourdan, is do you have a favorite book or books, or is there a book that you like to gift often?
I love books. Oh my gosh, books have changed my whole life. They're everything to me. My all-time favorite book changes. This changes all the time, but right now it's Braving the Wilderness by Brené Brown. I love Brené Brown for so many reasons, as most of us do. The other one that really hit home for me, which is very popular, was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yep. It's okay. You can say it. It's all good.
And The Untethered Soul was a really good one too. The Untethered Soul was interesting. It was kind of a little out there, but it really brought my attention to how energetic our world is, which I'm just so in my mind all the time. So it was like, oh, what a cool new perspective of just energy. Okay. In addition, the ones that I'm reading now are The Happiness Hypothesis. It's pretty good. I like that one. And I'm also reading The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo.
Cool.
Just kind of more of an daily intention type book.
Yeah, I know Brené Brown is an author that comes up probably more than any other author in my podcast and stuff. So I think I've listened to maybe one of her TED Talks or the one that she has, but she's definitely a very powerful author and speaker, and again comes up often in the podcast. So.
Yeah, she's amazing.
So I just want to ask you about the Brené Brown book that you mentioned, Braving the Wilderness. Like, what's kind of the context or kind of the gist of that book?
Being brave enough to take a step back and really see what's a little bit deeper, right? Cool. And also not being afraid to step into the unknown, which is a very broad sentence as far as what the book is all about, but she takes a slightly different approach on it because her big thing is vulnerability. So it's how to use vulnerability to really step into that space of the wilderness. And it's something that I definitely needed at the time. Right.
Now, what I read off of your Instagram there at the beginning, kind of the introduction reading, was there some sort of correlation kind of maybe between that Braving the Wilderness book and then kind of just getting out of that comfort zone at that time of your life when you posted that? Or
so fascinating. I wrote that right after I had left my very, very secure training job to go out on my own. And what's funny is I got the recommendation for that book right after. So I was ready and open, and it was one of those things where a friend referred it to me, and it was like perfect timing because I need this.
And that's the beautiful thing about life I've found in my own personal life is that everything, when your eyes are open, your ears are open, your heart is open, like you get to see how everything is tied together.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, I was in a job interview earlier this past week, and I'm from a small town of 5,000 people in northwest Iowa called Cherokee, Iowa, and there was 3 people interviewing me for this position. One of the ladies said, "Well, where at in Iowa are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Cherokee, Iowa." The other lady said, "I lived in Cherokee during my 3rd and 4th grade year." Like, this is in Colorado Springs, second biggest city in Colorado. I'm like 12, 13 hours away from my hometown, and this lady went to 3rd and 4th grade in my hometown. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, so it's like I stepped out of there, and just some things have been going on in my life personally lately. It's just like there's another sign of just, and I'm a firm believer in God and things of that nature. So it's like, for me, it's like, that's just God just confirming more things in my life, and it's just unbelievable. Whether you believe in the God of the Bible or another God or whatever you want to call that, like, if your eyes are open, your ears are open, your heart open, like, everything's intertwined, everything comes together. So when you mentioned that book, and then just kind of thinking back to that introduction reading from your Instagram, I'm like, there's probably some sort of correlation, So that's cool how things just play out and work out when we're open and we're ready, So all right. So the third question then, as part of our warm up, Jourdan, is there a favorite quote or mantra that has been impactful in your life?
Yes, that also changes a lot, but recently in the last 5 years, this is my favorite. You don't need to be perfect to inspire others. Let people be inspired by how you deal with your imperfections. And this has just been my motto because I'm a perfectionist. Yep. And it's been definitely part of my growth to learn how to share my imperfections. And this has been huge in just opening a lot of doors, because sharing imperfections, I think, is what has gotten me everything that is valuable to me right now. So it's very, very special to me.
Cool. Now, I want to kind of stay on this perfectionist topic for a moment, because I consider myself a recovering perfectionist. Like, when I was younger, like like my tween years, like I really started to struggle with a lot of anxiety, and a lot of that was like performance anxiety in regards to sports, athletics, because I knew I was never the most talented, I was never the most gifted, all of that stuff, but I knew if I outworked everybody, then I would have a place on the team, like, you know, the A team or varsity or whatever it was. And that kind of that perfectionism, I call it perfectionism, really created a lot of anxiety in my life at that time, which has, you know, to this day has created a lot of anxiety in my life. But recently, over the last, you know, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is, I've realized, like, you know, this world isn't perfect, and none of us are perfect. There are no perfect days. There's always going to be something that doesn't go the way we think it should or we want it to. And so that has allowed me, just kind of allowing that to play again and again in my mind, and really trying to live in that and walk in that, and just saying, hey, perfectionism is a lie. You're not a perfectionist. Like, perfection in this life isn't attainable. That's allowed me to be, that's been very freeing for me personally. So what I'm trying to get at, Jourdan, with that perfectionism, has that also created a lot of anxiety and just, you know, maybe just giving you some trouble over your life, or not per se?
Yeah, and when we kind of get into a little bit of the backstory, I will tell you how that kept me from doing all sports. Lucky for you, you outworked a lot of people. I wouldn't even give it that, because I was like, you know what, if I'm not perfect at it, I'm not even going to try. Cool. And so that's been a theme that I've had to really overcome in my life a lot. And I completely relate to you.
Yeah, so once we get into your backstory, we'll dig into that a little bit more, but I just know I've talked to, you know, quite a few people now, from professional athletes and trainers, all these different people, and most of us are type A. And I think with that type A personality, there's a lot of positives with the hard work and the grind and, you know, going after whatever we want to go after. But there's also a darker side of that that a lot of us kind of hold inside. And I think it's really important for the listeners just to be able to kind of understand, like, there is a dark side of that perfectionism or that type A personality. So we'll come back to that if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about that. But I know for myself personally, it's been, to this day, like, or even in this moment, it's a struggle. You know what I mean? It's a really struggle. So, all right. So we'll come back to that. The last question, then, Jourdan, for the warm up is, do you have a favorite podcast or most listened to podcast? And if there's more than one, just throw them out there. That would be great.
Well, I think this podcast is amazing.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you.
My absolute favorite podcast. Truly, I don't have a huge list of podcasts because I don't end up driving a lot, and so you know, that's when I typically listen to them. But Andy Frisella is my number one favorite podcast.
Are you gonna say the name of it?
the motherfucking CEO, man.
Yeah, there you go. He's real. He's the real deal.
Oh, he's real. He speaks the hard truth. And he also reminds me it's okay to be unsure about things, but still have the courage to just go for it. So that's hands down. Whenever I need a little push, I'm there.
Yeah, he's unfiltered. He's raw, but the cool thing is he's real and he's to the point. Like, it's like, hey, dude, like, this is who I am. I've made millions of dollars, and buy it or sell it. Like, I don't really care. But I listen to him, all the time. And I love listening to him, like, on other people's podcasts, just kind of sharing his story, because his upbringing and his story there in St. Louis, Missouri was pretty interesting, intense too. So that's a great podcast. So all right, so let's transition then, Jourdan, kind of into your backstory a little bit, if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, kind of like maybe where you grew up, and then just kind of like the childhood, what that was like, if you had some siblings, and then we'll maybe just transition kind of into the teen years, and then we'll start digging in maybe to a little bit of that perfectionism and kind of what that looked like for you at that stage of your life.
Cool. So. I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. However, I moved to Colorado when I was 9 months old, so I consider myself a true native. And back then, Denver was so different. It's been really cool to see it grow to what it is. But, I mean, you didn't visit certain areas of town, and the hip restaurants were like Chili's and Applebee's, not Barcelona Wine Bar. So it's cool to see it grow. I was born in the 80s, which I always think that's the best generation of all music and everything. Right on the tail end of the 80s, but I still got it.
I'm 87. What are you?
89.
89. All right, that's cool. So we're 90s kids, right?
Yes.
The 90s were super cool too.
Yes, absolutely. 90s were amazing. My mom and dad met in Louisiana at a church, and they got married super quick. I was a honeymoon baby. I definitely found that out, and
That's awesome.
I also have 3 younger brothers. So I'm the oldest. I'm the only girl. My one brother is 3 years younger than me, and then I have two younger brothers that are 12 and 14 years younger than me.
Wow, okay.
So they're kind of like my babies. Sometimes it's hard for me to see them as my brothers.
Right.
But I also kind of contribute that to why I don't have any kids, because I feel like I really spent a lot of time raising them as a teenager. Or helping. And then as a kid, what I really cared about when I think about this is performing well, even if it wasn't in things that I wasn't good at, like grades and my penmanship papers. Those gold stars were everything to me.
Yep.
I really wanted to please just all my peers. That was really important to me. And then it really backfired when it came to sports. So, back when I was a kid, I remember trying even like the PE tests, like the pull-ups, and not being able to do one, and instantly just feeling so defeated. And that was my first taste of kind of failure, and I didn't know how to deal with it. It was like, ooh, I'm not good at this, so I'm just not going to do it. And that was kind of my childhood. I ended up doing some cheerleading, which showed me I was good at coordination. I kind of moved up the ladder quick with that, and dance. But I just shied away from sports, which is just fascinating now to look back and think, because that's one of my regrets. And I don't regret anything, but I'm like, man, like, I could have been so great, and I just never even let myself try that. So childhood was good though, just pretty normal, like making up music video like recordings to NSYNC and Britney Spears, using the camcorder to film them and show my parents, and they're real great to watch now.
That's good stuff. Like, that brings back memories, because we had our art teacher growing up. He would let us and it was mostly the girls, but he would let us like bring any CD, within reason, any CD that we wanted, and listen to it during art. And so I've got like certain like Hanson, Spice Girls, Backstreet Boys songs that are just little, I can't sing the whole song, but just little parts of songs just like are forever till the day I die, like stuck in my brain, because the girls would always bring them, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like not this again,
jumping
not
on
Hanson.
The trampoline with the boombox. I mean, that was it.
Oh man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. The 90s were really good. So
they were.
So now, if you don't mind me asking, Jourdan, like, you talk about kind of that, like that kind of the fear of failure, whether it's, in school or other activities. Have you had a chance to maybe think about and kind of reflect on like where that came from? Was that maybe something just like maybe you growing up in like a very disciplined home, and you just didn't want to get in trouble, or do you kind of have an idea where that maybe started or where that came from?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this, and it seems like ever since I can remember, that one of the first instances is not that my parents were really, told me that I was only good if I got good grades or anything. They actually weren't at all. It kind of just, from what I can remember, that's just kind of how I was. And so, but then once you get into school, you start competing, and I remember in kindergarten I did like penmanship, and I was so proud of my penmanship paper. And I remember getting all gold stars, and then one day I got a silver star, and it just devastated me. And I remember showing my dad and bawling, and he's like, it's okay, like you'll get a gold star next time. And that was just one of the first memories I can remember where it was like, wow, like I felt like I had to perform at a certain level to be loved or something, So, yeah.
Okay. So outside of like kind of like childhood and elementary, then what did kind of the high school years look like for you? I know, just as I was doing a little research and looking up on your website, I know it sounds like towards the end of high school, like your senior year, you kind of took up running and stuff. But maybe just before we get to the senior year, what did kind of those earlier high school days look like for you?
Yeah, so high school was really hard, actually really hard. My 4 years of high school were interesting. I was a cheerleader, so that's kind of how I stayed somewhat active. However, I avoided all activities. So if we had to run the mile in cheerleading, I was somehow getting out of that. If we had to take PE, I was somehow figuring out a way to not have to be super active. I actually avoided exercise at all costs, which is crazy as to how that led me to where I am, and I love it now. But I just would never let myself be active. In fact, we had to take swimming to graduate, and everyone's like, take it your freshman year, get it over with. I'm like, no, I'm just going to get out of it. I waited until my senior year, tried to get 4 doctor's notes to get out of swimming, and the teacher looked at me and she's like, you will not get out of this. And, turns out, I mean, even though I was in the C group, like the people that literally couldn't swim, I ended up using that and doing triathlons, which is a crazy story, right? But I hated sports.
So why is that?
You know, and I think I just always assumed I wasn't good at them.
Okay.
I just had it in my head, and I was like, I don't want to fail. I don't want to look bad. I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. And it just, that fear paralyzed me.
Right.
But my parents ended up getting a bad divorce in my junior year, and I went into a lot of I partied a lot that junior year. My grades suffered tremendously my junior year of high school. From freshman and sophomore, I kind of just lost my whole identity, just not knowing how to deal with a lot of that pain at home. So drinking a lot, smoking a lot, just partying, just kind of forgetting, and then one day just being like, this isn't working.
Right.
and trying to exercise. And that was kind of the start of figuring out that I wasn't that bad, and exercise actually could be something really positive for me.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, going back to your parents' divorce and stuff, like, you kind of mentioned that kind of like threw you in a tailspin,
Yeah.
right? So if you don't mind sharing just a little bit, because a lot of young people have had to go through that, and I even have a strong example in my own personal life with a classmate. He was like a straight A student, and then his parents got divorced, and I mean he ended up going to like a mental hospital and just
Wow.
having some issues with cutting, and this is a guy, So I saw that, and I was like, wow, I think that was kind of the first kind of like negative experience that I had from somebody else, whose parents had a divorce. And when we were growing up, I think that's when divorce kind of really started to take off in our culture, in our country, from
Yes.
kind of what I can remember and just looking back and on things. But so just kind of what was your mindset? Was it just something like, was it really hard for you to understand and kind of grasp like why that happened, or was there some things maybe leading up that you were just like, this might be inevitable, or if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, no problem. I feel like my parents should have gotten a divorce a long time ago,
Okay.
but they kind of stayed together because
Yeah.
of the kids, which a lot of people did.
Yep.
And unfortunately for us, though, that meant like dealing with a lot of fighting, a lot of kind of just a lot of fear around my parents' relationship, and that fighting when you're so young and you don't know how to process those feelings, it kind of can turn to a lot of inner anger within you, and then
Right.
that kind of translates into being kind of mean or
Yep.
short, or not being
Right.
able to have a lot of really close friendships. And so it really affected my whole social life too.
Right.
Not only was I dealing with fear of failure all the time because I'm a perfectionist, but now I'm like, why can't I maintain friendships, and why can't I function like
Right.
normal? Why do I feel
Right.
so distant and separate from everyone? So it wasn't really until I was able to work through that as an adult that I was like, wow, how crazy how that can affect a teenager that doesn't know how to process those
Right.
emotions.
Yeah, and again, for myself, like my mom was married previously and got a divorce. She had 2 kids, and I tell people all the time, like with my own half brother, my own half sister, I still see their moms and dads and all of those things at this point in the game, but I still see in their lives some of that negativity from that divorce.
Yeah.
Because they were around, I think like 12, 13, 14 years old, very, very impressionable ages. They're going through different changes with their bodies, and junior high school, early high schools can be some really weird times for us, and I can still see some of those negative effects in them.
Yeah.
Whether they realize it or not themselves, but just me from kind of being outside, a younger sibling, I see it.
Yeah.
And like I saw that with one of my classmates, and it can be. I don't think adults who have kids really realize the impact that their lives and what they say and how they live their lives before their kids, like how grave an impact that can really play for years and years. And some kids, unfortunately, they never recover from that.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to get to where you're at today and how you work through some of that stuff here in a little bit. But some people it puts them in a tailspin forever, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I think that's just an encouragement for all of you listeners out there, and it's an encouragement for myself just to, as a school teacher, just to really take serious when we're around younger kids, and if we are a teacher or a coach or a trainer or a parent or grandparent, just to be really cognizant of what we're saying, what's coming out of our mouths, and our actions, because kids, even when you think they're not listening or they're not paying attention, they really are, and they're so impressionable. So let's try to just be a little bit better, everybody, in what we say, and just how we live our lives, really just to be better examples for that next generation. So, all right, so let's transition. So you were trying to get out of PE class and, not really into the exercise thing, going through your parents' divorce, trying to work through all that. But then there was kind of a transition, from my understanding, Jourdan, like your senior year, and that kind of came through running. You kind of realized, like, hey, exercise kind of is a good outlet. I kind of do enjoy it. So let's just unpack that a little bit, and then let's move into kind of those college years, if you don't mind. So.
And actually, I just had a memory that I don't think I've ever shared with anyone.
All right, well,
but I think this
if you want to share it on the podcast, that's cool.
This kind of a funny thing leading up to it, and this could be an encouragement too, but when I was a junior, I didn't initially get into running. So my dad is a national champion bodybuilder, but I actually really shied away from that scene because I just saw all these like meatheads, and it seemed like this really unhealthy environment just from the outside looking in, and kind of these guys that weren't very nice, and I just got this kind of image in my head and really shied away against like any sort of that scene too. But again, my junior year, I remember smoking a Prime Time. I don't know if you guys know what that are, but they're like these little mini cigars. They are so bad for you. And I used to smoke these things as a junior. Like I was so cool in my, little bug driving around. And I go to the gym for my first day, and I jump on the elliptical. And then I had watched my dad enough in my life. I was like, all right, I'm just going to choose like 6 machines and go through them and then do crunches. And I like died. And I got back in my car and I got out of Prime Time and smoked it. And this was my fitness routine for a good 3 months while quitting smoking. Literally, I would like go in and be like, that hurts so bad, but I can't wait to get a Prime Time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just forgot about that, but that was 3 months worth until one day I'm like, oh my gosh, I could get to like the next level on the elliptical if I just stopped smoking Prime Times. And I did. And I quit. And so that was kind of junior year of experimenting with like step aerobics and just being like, any little bit of positivity I could like grab onto at the time, I would. And exercise was truly all I had. I would go to school. I would be really distant from people. I mean, people that knew me in high school, I'm sure they think I'm so different today because I was really, really antisocial my junior and senior year and stayed to myself a lot, and I would just kind of stay at the gym because it was the only way that I could, experience some sort of hope in life. And my senior year, it wasn't until my senior year that I found running, and I had moved out of my mom's. I had moved in with my dad. I was actually sleeping on a couch. He had just a little apartment when he moved out. He didn't really have much, and I slept on a couch for 8 months. And I had kind of done, the elliptical was kind of an intro into running, and then I was like, maybe I should just like sign up for a half marathon. Why not? I need a goal. And so I started training for a half marathon, and there's this one road that I trained it all on. Like I would have my goals, and I would slowly watch myself like 1 mile, and then the next week 2 miles, and then 3, and that was my senior year, and that's when I really started understanding that I'm so much stronger than I think that I am. And that's when I really started building up that inner strength and realizing that I can come out of this and I'm going to be okay. And running truly saved my life. Yeah,
that's beautiful. So you mentioned your dad and him being a bodybuilder. So there was like an example in your life, and maybe some seeds being planted when you were growing up of exercise and kind of like the benefits or maybe the power of exercise through your dad. Is that correct? And then kind of what was his influence? Because you said you moved in with your dad then and lived on the couch for 8 months. Did you have a pretty close relationship with your dad? And what was that? What did that mean to you as being like the only daughter and things of that?
My mom really wasn't into exercise, so it was kind of always this contrast, right, of my dad kind of going to the gym to get his own relief, and then us kind of just all being at home and not really knowing that side of it. So he planted these seeds, and we got to see him compete and do really well. But it wasn't until really my junior year, he saw me kind of going into the gym, and then he would kind of slowly give me a few little tips there, or he'd like look at a guy trainer and be like, "That's my daughter, don't you dare talk to her."
There you go. The protector.
But otherwise, he kind of let me discover that for myself, but he was always supportive. My dad was at every race I ever did. Anytime I was training, I mean, I remember telling him and just seeing his face light up. So it definitely, he was an encourager in a very a quieter way.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's very cool. So all right, so you take up running your senior year. You're starting to kind of find an interest and a passion for that. So then you go off to college, and like what kind of if I remember right, there was a transfer to Colorado State. So kind of what did the college years look like? What was your major and things of that nature?
Yeah, this was crazy too. So my junior year grades were bad, and I didn't really care about them. And then my senior year, I kind of tried to make it up, but by that time, you're applying for colleges.
Right.
So my parents, I remember saying, like, we don't know if you're going to be able to get into college, Jourdan, and maybe what are your other backup plans? And after I started getting into this running and started building this confidence, I was like, you know what? No, I refuse to let that happen. And by that time, I had like my half marathon done. I got a really good time on that. I had run a few 5Ks, and I remember sitting in the library for about 2 months and just writing essays to different colleges. And I applied to about 5 different colleges, and then I ended up getting accepted into Fort Lewis. And right then, I sent in my scores for my running times just to try. I just had this feeling. I was like, why don't I just try? And they gifted me a full ride scholarship for running. This is from a girl that hated sports, didn't play any sports in high school, got into running just literally to survive, got good enough times that somehow they let me come on that team and paid me to do it.
Wow.
So at that time, I remember thinking, like, I don't know how this is happening, but I am just going to go with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, Fort Lewis, when I think about it, was this whole different life. I went there, I was almost escaping, and even though when I look back I have the most fond memories, it was like my chance to just redo my whole life and to just leave my whole past behind. So kind of just stuffed it down, you know, and I lived this really positive life. I was on the running team, and I didn't like to be still because that let me sit with a lot of thoughts, and that wasn't good for me at the time. So I was constantly filling my schedule with being busy just because I didn't want to have to sit with myself. And so basically I would fill my time working. I would teach spin and aerobics, and then on the side I would also be training for triathlons while also running as a college athlete. That is not a sustainable pace. That should show you how much I really, really couldn't just sit with myself. And I ended up getting a stress fracture within 2 years, and then 2 more in the next year and a half.
Oh wow! So that was like your freshman, sophomore.
Freshman, sophomore.
Fort Lewis.
Yeah. Okay. So my poor body just could not take that.
Yeah.
And I remember getting injured and being like, it's all good. I'll just put some, take some ibuprofen, and I would still run on these things just because that's how much I was just trying to avoid feeling anything.
That you bring your own cup. We don't have to cups.
And
perfect.
I'm so sorry. There's a little noise in the background.
It's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
And so basically, I didn't know how to deal with that at the time. That was a pretty big identity crisis, and not knowing how to feel and how to deal, I decided to escape again. So I transferred to Colorado State, and that was truly another form of escape for me. Just get rid of everything that I'm feeling here and just try somewhere else, just because that has to be better. And turns out it wasn't at all. Actually, none of my credits transferred. I wanted to major in nutrition, and they told me everything would. It wouldn't. I ended up adding so much money. I pay student loans, which I would have never had to pay now if I would have just stayed.
Yeah.
And I didn't get on the running team. I was obviously really injured. And I had a hard time there because I was working as a bartender to support myself, and I was trying to go to school, and there was all this stuff that I had inside, and it was hard for me to get close to people, but despite all that, I did end up graduating with a degree in health and exercise science. It was rough though. I remember every day thinking, I just can't wait to be on my own. I cannot wait to be out of college. Like, I can't believe I'm adding on this much money to my career, and that I'm going to have to pay back. And but I also, while I was there, found other forms of exercise such as yoga and meditation, which are to this day a huge part of my growth. And I remember not still understanding what I was feeling in yoga, but I would cry a lot, and I would always end up feeling very refreshed and calm, which is something that I was not used to feeling.
Right.
So, Colorado State really taught me that a little more of the soft side. It brought in the yoga side and at least let me sit. I still didn't know why I was having to sit, but it opened up some doors to start helping me understand that I had a lot of healing to do.
Right. Okay, so I want to sit where we're at right now, and cover this whole thing of, because we in the beginning we talked about kind of the perfectionism thing, how the type A, then with the situation with your parents getting a divorce, and then kind of your struggle with just like the fear of like failing and all this stuff, different stuff, like, because this is a big, like I said, like I've already told you, Jourdan, like, and the listeners, like, this is something that I struggle with and I've had to deal with, and it's something that I feel like in our culture and our society, like the anxiety, there's a lot of people that are heavily medicated and stuff, and things of that nature. And I see kids as a school teacher, as a middle school teacher, I just see a lot of kids with medication and the ADD, and I mean, they're just like bouncing off the walls and stuff. So how did you, so you said you kind of got these softer skills with the yoga and things like that, and you started to realize like maybe, there's some things that you need to work through, and that's going to come through kind of being alone and having that stillness and that quietness in your life, and you, the theme of kind of running away from things and escaping keeps coming up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I really want to unpack this for the listeners, because I know there's a lot of us out there that struggle with this, that are struggling with it right now, or going to have to go through it, and maybe they're trying to escape, maybe they're running from things, So how did you start to deal with some of that stuff that you need to deal with from your past, and some of this perfectionism, maybe some of the anxiety and stuff like that? What did that look like for you, Jourdan, in your life, and how do you still kind of work through that to this day?
Oh my gosh, I'm still working on it so much.
No, I am too. It's a battle every day.
Journey. But initially, I got rid of my watch, and this was because when I would run, I would always set these standards. Like, I had to run at a certain pace, and for me to consider that a good run. And that just right there, was in all these areas of my life. If something wasn't exactly how I thought it should be, it didn't really count. So getting rid of my watch and just going and running at whatever pace felt good to my body was my first chance to really just allow myself to have that mind-body connection and tune in and let go of expectation. And that was huge for me. I still don't run without a watch, ever. I still do not run without a watch, or with a watch, I'm sorry. And that was the start. And then the yoga thing was really interesting because it did make me sit in a lot of my shit. It made me have to just breathe through things. It taught me the power of my breath, and that I still use to this day when I'm feeling out of control or when I'm feeling like I want to flee.
Right.
Taking deep breaths is truly a powerful force that keeps me here and gives me the strength to not run. So, exercise is definitely a way that I've found to deal with those inner things, because it really moves energy, right? Right. And when you're using exercise the right way, you truly are just moving energy around to be able to deal with it. But you have to be courageous enough to understand that there is so much down there. And ultimately now where I'm at, I've gotten such a connection with my body through all of these different modalities of movement, and being courageous enough to say, I need help. I need to work through these things, that I can feel if something's hurting my heart. Right. I can feel if something's hurting my gut. I can tune in a lot better to how things are making me feel, and then from there take a step back and say, okay, how do I sit in this, and then what fear is laying behind this? But this is still a huge work in progress, and this isn't something that is easy. It's really uncomfortable, and in fact, I tell a lot of my clients when they're going through things like this too, like, if it feels horrible, like literally horrible, you're doing it right. And I have to tell myself the same thing. Like, if you just want to hide, you're doing it right. Mm-hmm. And find something that can keep you in there. And for me, it's movement, but sometimes it's literally just sitting still.
Right. So that's that stillness, because I know for me, exercise can create a lot of, and I'm talking about like lifting weights, running, kind of that going out and getting after it type exercise, not the yoga, not the softer stuff, but exercise can create, for me personally, a lot of anxiety, because I take it very serious. I take like my aesthetics and my eating and all that very, very seriously. So if I'm not focused then that can create a lot of anxiety for me personally around exercise and just thinking about it, my food and all that. So that stillness, you mentioned like kind of that stillness and that quietness. I know for me, just being alone, and I'm not talking about being like in a closet in the dark thinking, but just like if I'm just driving or just going for a walk, like having that quietness and that stillness, just having being lost in my own thoughts has been very powerful and important for me to really kind of grasp who I am and why I'm here on this earth. So if you don't mind just maybe expounding a little bit more, Jourdan, on the importance for you personally in that stillness and really reflecting and thinking about yourself and where you're going and what you want your life to look like. So.
Oh my gosh, the alone time is so important, and for a long time I felt like something was wrong with me because I wanted to be alone, and for a little bit I think that I was using it as a way to just avoid people, right? Because you think about it, you know, part of living is other people. It's being around each other. It's having something being said to you that you don't feel good about, and being able to respond in a way that comes from the heart, right? Yes. So I kind of felt guilty, and I almost felt like something was wrong with me for a long time when I was going through a lot of this healing, because I needed to be alone, and I beat myself up over it. Right. And I think I could have even healed a lot quicker if I would have just given myself that space, but instead I felt like, oh, well, I need to make sure people see me with other people and that they don't think I'm just a loner. And I feel so bad now looking back at that side, because it was a real struggle. And then now, you know, being alone is something that is just part of my weekly routine. I have to have it. Yes. And specifically in nature, it takes maybe 30 minutes on a mountain in peace and quiet for me to truly feel connected again to a bigger picture. Right. And that bigger picture is what truly fuels everything I do. When I lose track of the bigger picture of life, and that we are all literally standing on a speck of dust floating in the universe, that's when I get so caught up in these little things that are just fear-based and that hold me back. Right. So alone time is so critical to growth, and to just knowing that it's okay to take it, because I wish someone would have told me that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, Jourdan, because I can personally relate. And I know just people that are driven, and again, going back to that type A, like I think most of us struggle with these type of things. And listening to some of these, like Andy Frisella, you know, the MFCEO podcast, and Ed Milet, and some of these guys that are worth millions of dollars, they're high performers. I mean, they're putting everybody under the table. Like, you know, when they share their story, like, a lot of them deal with this type of stuff too. You know, just that anxiety, just that, because I think it's because we know there's more out there. We know what we're capable of, and we just feel like we got to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And it's just like that kind of stirs up that anxiety, because it's like, am I doing enough? Did I do enough today? Was my workout good enough? And it's just like, it kind of snowballs, you know? And I really think that comes from just like us, kind of how we're wired, of like, hey, like I know, like, you know, what's inside of me. I know what's capable. I don't want to be normal. I don't want to be average. I don't want to be lazy. And it just, I think if we're, again, not focused and in control of our own thoughts and mind, and kind of being grounded and level-headed, like, you know, those thoughts can just get out of control. And that's where it's just like we can lose ourselves in that, you know.
Yes. So. And like something too is, you know, filling up our time being so busy that it's like just to feel like we're productive, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what have I actually accomplished? And to me, I'm realizing like, wow, like, is this being busy even a sign that I don't believe fully in myself? Because if I was productive with my time and I got to where I wanted to be, am I scared of that? Am I scared of having to then live up to some expectation up here, right? Because I'm not fully healed. And I think that's part of my process now too, is just instead of being busy thinking, wait, where do I really want to go? What is going to really fulfill me, and how do I do that, instead of just filling up my time with all this productive work that's not really productive at all.
So what's something, if you don't mind sharing, Jourdan, what's something right now, like today, in kind of your current state of life, what's something that really causes that fear for you, or that anxiety where you have to kind of step back and just say, hey, Jourdan, like, just chill, or however you kind of have that self-talk within you?
Oh yeah, well, burnout. So I've always my whole life struggled with burnout, but what is burnout? It means no focus So focus. When I start feeling like I'm having a conversation and I can't even listen to what someone is saying because I have that many other thoughts running through my head, I have to actually, that's my immediate red flag of something's off. And something's not on balance. So really learning the red flags is huge because they're all different for all of us. And now it makes it easier because it's like, it is like a guidebook for you. It's like, wait, what do I need to remember like comes up when I'm out of balance? What are those signs so that next time when I feel it, I immediately know, let's take a step back, deal with this, and then move forward again.
Okay,
versus just plowing through it.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, Jourdan. So, all right, so you graduate from Colorado State University, got your degree and everything. What did kind of post-college look like? I know there was a Middle East experience. Was that immediately after college, or where did that kind of come in?
No, so after college, I got this degree, and then I applied for all these jobs that I didn't get, and it started getting really frustrating, and everyone was like, you should be a trainer, And I remember thinking, like, I got a degree, like, I want to be more than a trainer. That's truly how I viewed that job. And it just I remember watching a lot of trainers like on their phones or like just kind of staring at their client, and I just remember thinking like, I can't do that, I don't, that's not challenging enough for me. And I didn't get a degree for this. And so what's funny is after about 11 job applications that didn't turn into anything, I took a job at 24 Hour Fitness in Fort Collins. It was the only thing I could get. And but it was funny because the first day on the job, I remember thinking, with my first client, I'm like, oh, this isn't that bad. I actually really like this. I actually think I made a difference in her life today. And I was hooked after my first client. I have never experienced anything like that. Nothing ever brought that passion out of me since I found running. And I didn't even know it was still there. So it kind of unlocked this trapped, energy within me. And from there I just was in the right place at the right time, truly. I decided to start this like small group training. It was called Bikini Body, and I was like, you get a nutrition plan and workouts, and I posted like these homemade flyers all over the gym. And again, before small group training was a thing, that was kind of the first of its kind. I had 64 women sign up.
Awesome. Wow.
So I immediately, that was 2 months out of the gate that I just had 64 clients essentially.
Wow.
And I ran with that, obviously. I did another one. It was like a second edition of Bikini Body 2. And then after that, I dealt with a little bit of conflict at the gym. There was just kind of some gross stuff happening. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take my business outside now. So I just didn't even know what I was doing, but I rented space out of a gym, and then I ran boot camps in the park, and I literally did this for about 8 months.
Wow.
In the winter, just would run them at this really crappy, like, old school baseball training center, and then in the summers, like, we would even be out in the rain, like, doing it. And then one of my clients, her brother owned 8 gyms in the Middle East, and she just randomly one day was like, you know what, they don't do boot camps there yet, and you're doing all these boot camps, and I think he could really use your services to like go and teach these trainers how to run boot camps. And I was like, well, I've got nothing to lose, right? So let's do it. And I contacted a girlfriend that I knew was from Jourdan, and she spoke Arabic. I was like, do you want to go with me? She went. I arrived in Amman, Jordan, and I taught all these trainers how to run boot camps.
Wow.
And at the end of that 2 weeks, it was such a great experience that time around. At the end of that 2 weeks, my boss, he was like, this went so well. What do you think about coming on board, helping us open a CrossFit gym, and then helping just kind of create the trainer curriculum? I was like, sure, why not? So I closed down my business. My husband now, we were kind of dating at the time. I was like, why don't you come with me? Because if we're going to be living there, I don't know. I was a little sketched out just to live there, right? Alone. I didn't really know much about their country. And so I was like, why don't you just come? You can we'll say you're my assistant.
There you go.
And so we got put up in like the locals. Like we lived with all the locals. I mean, our landlord needed a translator for his translator. Like we couldn't speak a lot of the native language. Arabic is very hard, but we worked and we opened the second CrossFit gym in the country, which was a fabulous experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Even with the women who are all wearing hijabs, like those girls were just like putting up power cleans, like no big deal, right?
That's
it was
cool.
a really
That's
cool thing to see.
Yeah.
It's very empowering, and especially for the women, because the CrossFit brought like men and women they didn't work out. We kind of like introduced that, which was a battle in of itself. But we stayed there on and off for 18 months. We come back every 3 months for about 3 weeks just to get everything in order here, and then we fly right back.
Wow.
And that got to be a lot after a while,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And also just there were a lot of cultural differences, and I think at the time I was just really young and it was hard for me to accept them. So it just made everyday living really stressful. So when that got to be too much, like my gut health went to hell, like everything in my body was kind of just met out of whack. And I was like, you know what, now that my health is suffering, I think it's time to head back. So we moved back, and that's when I got a job at Pure Vita, which is, it's closed now. It was a gym in Cherry Creek.
Okay.
They just recently closed, but it was like the premier place to be. Very high end. All the trainers had degrees, and I was like, well, I really don't want to, go back to just being a trainer is how I kind of thought, but I'm like, but whatever, this place is awesome.
For sure.
And that was kind of the start to like my second, or like kind of where I am now.
Yeah. So before we jump into kind of where you're at right now, Jourdan, is there one maybe life lesson that maybe is still very strong in your mind and your heart that you took away from your experience in the Middle East?
So many. Oh my gosh, so many. But the main one was just truly, to this day, I've never been more open-minded than after experiencing that. I've also never been more grateful. So for where for where I'm at, I should say. Their country is so different than ours, and when I went in, I kind of went in with like this mindset of, I just graduated college, you want me to be here because I'm from America, and it's so crazy to look back at that because they already have a culture of their own, and I was very unwilling to mesh with that at the time, and so now whenever I meet anyone, I'm always so interested in their culture and their story, and culture I've realized has been a huge growing point for me to just embrace other cultures because there's so much beauty to that, right?
Absolutely.
So that was definitely what I took from that.
Cool. Yeah, I have not been overseas, but I did live in inner city Detroit for almost a year, and worked at the YMCA there as a camp counselor. And for me, for the first time in my life, being a minority and just being around, the inner city you might as well be overseas if you're coming from a small town in Iowa.
Yes.
So that was for me too a very eye-opening experience, and some of the hardest times in my life, hardest 11 months of my life, but also some of the most beautiful because I learned so much how to appreciate other people and different cultures, and just it really comes back to just respect. You know what I mean? Like I never had some of the deadliest neighborhoods in the United States are in inner city Detroit. And I had different experiences of double homicides and all kinds of stuff going on around me. I never had any issues though, because I really feel like, it was just that respect thing. Like I respected them. I'm like, this is your territory. This is your neighborhood. I'm not here to do anything. I'm not here to score drugs. I'm not here to whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just here because this is where I believe God wants me to be.
Yeah.
And because of that respect, they respected me, and it was a great experience overall. I look back, I'm like, dude, I learned so much. It was awesome. But again, just having that appreciation for different people, all the spices of life, and I think that's really something cool that you gain from your experience in the Middle East. So appreciate you sharing that, Jourdan. So you come back, and then you talk about working at this gym. Let's jump then into kind of where you're at today, Jourdan. So you're an entrepreneur. You have your own thing kind of going on. Why don't you just share with the listeners and myself kind of what that is, what that looks like, and let's just kind of just unpack kind of where you're at this moment in the game of life. Yeah,
well, and I do think it's important because at Pure Vita, that was when I built what I have now. Okay. So it did take about 5 years of really hard work. The first 2 years especially were like 5 a.m. to 3 p.m., take a nap, and then go back from 5 to 8. So they were really long days that I spent there the first 2 years, and a lot of adrenal fatigue going in and out of that, right? So it was really brutal, but I ended up with another girl, Sarah Fox, we ended up building these big groups again of these women's small group training. And from there, I was able to, it finally just got to be too much, like what you read at the beginning. That was right after I quit Pure Vita. Okay. And then I was like, you know what, I'm ready to take the leap and do this on my own. I've got this. And I am so happy that I did. It has truly opened up so many doors to just be out on my own and be able to do things that I want to do, but it's really scary because you wonder, now your clients aren't being fed to you. You have to maintain that, right?
Right.
So it's scary. But currently I work out of Vital Strength and Fitness. I do that 3 days a week. I train for 8 to 9 hours during those days back to back, and 3 days a week it keeps me in balance. 5 days a week, I can't give what I want to my clients. I especially Thursday and Friday, I'm tapped out.
Yep. They
don't get a good side of me. So 3 days a week is what I do now. I also work for a fitness software company, like the visuals that you see at like F45, that are displaying the exercises. I sell that software.
Okay, cool.
And then I'm also creating my own fitness app called Gym Quickies, and that's where I'll kind of host all my virtual training clients.
Awesome.
And I've tried to resist that, but it's in demand. I have a lot of demand for it, and especially when I kind of limit my training schedule, it's definitely going to be a good way to keep training people without being able to see them all the time.
Right. Now, what is the, and this is more for the listeners or somebody that's maybe just graduated college or just got their certification as a personal trainer, because I definitely understand the importance of it, but just share with the listeners for people like us that are in the health and fitness industry, and especially for people that are, trying to go out on their own, what is the value and the importance of social media today?
Oh, I talk sometimes I'm like, I want to delete my Instagram today. And then I'm like, no, it's gotten me every single client, that I have gotten on my own. So the club fed me clients initially, but social media for the health and fitness industry is truly everything. It gives people a preview of what you do. It attracts the exact right client to you because you only post what you're doing. So then you're going to naturally just draw in the right people.
Right.
And I can't even tell you every single new client that I have comes from Instagram. 1 to 2 clients a week I get.
Yeah. Now is because from my perspective, like I got Facebook, my August of my freshman year in college, and Facebook was, the thing.
Yeah.
But now it seems like, now the parents, the grandparents, great grandparents on there, and Facebook, and with all the whatever you want to call it, I'll just call it like fake news and all. It seems like I get on a Facebook feed and it's just a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
And so like most of my time is spent on Instagram. Would you say, especially for people like that are in the health and fitness industry, Instagram is really the social media platform for those type of people?
Hands down.
Yeah.
I don't use Facebook at all. It's my personal, I post all my personal stuff on Facebook and then my business on Instagram.
There you go. Yeah, because that's what, like I told you before we started the interview, 99.9% of the people that come on the podcast, it's through Instagram.
Yes.
And for health and fitness with the Insta stories and just like the pictures and the captions, like for somebody in health and fitness, it's like it's where it's at.
Yes.
'Cause health and fitness, whether you like it or not, like it's aesthetics. It's that you kind of you pull people in by the lifestyle that you live and kind of how you look and everything.
Yes.
And that's kind of the jam of Instagram. So, all right. So, what being an entrepreneur, kind of stepping out into your own, and we talked kind of about that fear, and there's been different fears that you've had to deal with in the past and overcome. What is the importance and the value, Jourdan, in regards to attacking your fears, and when you have those fears and you're starting to get that anxiety and you're like, I don't want to do this and all of that, and kind of the thoughts come flooding in, what is the value and the importance have you found in your own personal life of saying, hey, you know what, I'm really scared to do this, but I'm going for it? What has that done for you?
Well, initially, before I could get to that point, I had to work through a lot of stuff. So otherwise, it was almost like this vulnerability hangover where I'd be like, I'm going to do it anyways, and I'd do it, and then I'd be like, and it would be overwhelmingly scary. Mm-hmm. So to start working, like really getting to the root of what they are, and then saying, you know what, now that I can grab onto this fear and know exactly what it is, like fear that people aren't going to accept me for who I am, right? Now that I have this, I'm just going to show up and be me.
Right.
And actually, it's all about the action. It is every step of the way. It's about, are you taking action or are you not taking action on doing the things that are going to overcome them? Because the more you do them, the more they fade away.
Absolutely, yeah. So tying in with the kind of the fear thing and attacking your fears and just stepping out and going for things, what's the importance of somebody knowing who they are, and kind of like, the jargon that's thrown around is like kind of knowing your why.
Yeah.
Like what is the value of that? Because I know for me personally, it's like every day, everything in my life starts with like who I am, why I'm here, and what I'm going after.
Yes.
Like those three things right there for me personally, like that makes up my life.
Yes.
And really adds value to my life and gives me clarity of like, this is the direction I'm moving. So for you, Jourdan, attacking the fear and stepping out and being the entrepreneur and doing all these amazing things as a woman, what is the importance for an individual man or a woman, it doesn't matter, of knowing who they are, knowing their why, and having that foundation and grounding in their life?
This is what we should learn in school.
Yep.
We shouldn't have to
good.
graduate until we literally know the answer to this question, even if it's a little taste of it, because if you don't know the answer to this, you will fill up your schedule with all of these things that society tells you look successful, and then you'll never actually feel fulfilled because you're not ever getting to your why, and nothing has to do with your why. Amen. So until I figured my why out, I said yes to everything. And then I was always like, I'm not getting anywhere.
Right.
So it is hands down to know where you spend your money. I mean, looking at credit card statements is a really great way to figure out your why, because what you spend money on tells you what you value, you know? So that was a starting point for me. And once I kind of figured out where that was, and then knowing what gifts I had to offer to others, service to others, helping them, understand how strong they are, then I could say no to things. And once I could say no to things, all of a sudden all these other doors open that I could say yes to that were going to help me fulfill my values.
Right.
So it is everything.
Beautiful. Yeah, I can say amen to that, because it is everything. And for you listeners out there that maybe are feeling a little overwhelmed, you feel like there's a lack of clarity or lack of vision or something of that nature, a lack of just kind of knowing who you are, where you're going, what your life is all about. Jourdan said it. I've said it many a times. Previous guests have said it many times. You have to get quiet. You have to get still, and you have to spend time finding out what you're passionate about, what sets your heart on fire, what sets your soul on fire, and you have to really find out who you are and what your purpose here on this earth is. Because I don't care what religion you subscribe to or what you do or don't believe in. Each human being that's on this earth has a purpose. So what is your purpose? And once you find out what your purpose is, you'll find out you really step into true freedom, and you really step into becoming alive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are walking around on this earth that are physically alive, but there's that emptiness and that death inside of them because they don't know their purpose. So whatever it takes, it doesn't cost any money, but whatever it takes in your life to find out what your purpose is and what your why is, please figure that out, because that's when life really starts.
It's so true.
In our sphere of life here on this earth. So, all right, Jourdan, we've been going for a little over an hour, so we're gonna start wrapping things up here. I just want to touch on just broadly, if you don't mind, kind of like sharing, kind of like your. I know you've done a lot of group training and things of that nature. Kind of what is, if somebody hires you and as a trainer, and I know there's the personalization and all of that type of stuff and individualized programming, but just generally speaking, kind of what is somebody going to get from Jourdan in regards to like training and then nutrition?
Oh yeah.
And just broadly speaking, I know it's always individualized and personalized, but just in a general speak. If you don't mind.
We're gonna get to your why for sure.
Cool. Yeah.
My training is not just about physical things anymore. That has backfired over and over.
Right.
Again with people. So I retain clients because I figure out their why, and then I help them find movement that's gonna line up with their why. So that's what you can get from me. As far as nutrition, same thing. There's so much out there now with gut health and allergies and everything.
Right.
So that's a very in-depth conversation that typically I'll refer out as far as nutrition.
Okay, cool.
But for the most part, it's just what are we going to eat to also keep your why in alignment, because certain foods aren't going to help you figure that out.
Right. All right. Perfect. So so basically we hit the nail on the head just a few minutes ago when we were talking about the why and the purpose, because all of your training and fitness starts with your client's why.
Exactly.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Good deal. I mean, I didn't even know that was coming, but that's good. That's great. I mean, that's the continuity and the beauty of just I don't know, the podcast thing and just talking to people and how everything's intertwined and connected. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, you mentioned your husband, I think, a couple times on the podcast, and so what I want you to just share as much and as comfortably as you are with sharing. What is the importance of your husband and just having kind of that soulmate and that individual to lean on in your life, how does that really empower you and help you through your life, Jourdan?
Oh man, well, it took a long time for me to actually be able to admit that I needed help.
Yeah.
And while I was in the process of learning that, he was literally rubbing my feet when I got home from standing for 14 days and cooking dinner and telling me I'm doing great. And I had no idea how much I needed that until I had it. And
Right.
he was the backbone of so much growth for me.
Mm-hmm.
He held so much space for growth. He was there while I was going through it to let me know that I could go through these things and actually still be loved. So my husband I truly give him so much credit for just my growth process, and to have someone there with you that can just sit with you
Right.
is everything. So yeah, he's amazing.
Does he because I know like a lot of times in life we get so focused kind of in our little world and what we're going on. Has he really been somebody, a trustful person in your life that has been able to even like challenge you a little bit of like saying, hey Jourdan, like, you know, I love you and everything. I know you're going really hard in this direction. You're grinding hard and everything's cool, but maybe think about this, or you know, here's some food for thought. Has he been able to kind of challenge you a little bit and help you to maybe think about some different things?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
like, I have a big smile on my face because yeah, he always has done that.
That's
But for
cool, yeah.
years, it would lead to a fight.
Okay,
Right? Because I'd
okay.
be like, dude, I got this under
Right,
control.
yep,
I
yep,
don't
yep.
need your input. And then all of a sudden, one day, when it was like, wait, he's trying to help, and
Right,
I was
right,
able
right.
to let that in. Now, when he'll come at me with those things, I'm like, I want to listen to this.
Yeah.
And because he can see it from an outside perspective when we get so in our heads about stuff, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh yeah, duh, it's not that big of a deal.
Right,
and
right.
and it can, you know, that person can just help you put it all into perspective.
Yeah,
He
and
does that for me all the time.
That's really cool, because I think whether it's a significant other or parent or a friend, I think it's really important and valuable to have at least one person in our lives that you know they love you and you can trust them, but they'll also speak those hard things, that hard truth in your life, because we can just get so we can get delusional, just to be
Yes.
straight up. Like, we can get so caught up in ourselves and our feelings, our emotions, whatever we got going on, and it's just so important, again, whoever it is, but just to have somebody say, hey, like, you need to check yourself, you know?
Absolutely.
So, I think there's a lot of growth. I know there's a lot of growth in having at least one of those people in your life. So
Yes.
All right, so just maybe one or two things. I just want to talk, you know, we're talking about like your relationship with your husband, but what is the importance and the value, Jourdan, have you found in your life of having like a community of, whether that's friends, coworkers, you know, clients? What's the importance of having some people, that community in your life?
A community is important for so many reasons. One, to bounce ideas off of, to be able to be vulnerable with, and to just show who you are with. You grow from community. The second is, you know, just a group of friends. What am I trying to say here? There's so many things. I don't know why this one was spacing
Accountability?
out. Accountability, yes. And just being able to have a lot of people call you out on
Right.
things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And not in a bad way, but just you grow through community,
Yeah.
you know, and just by knowing that you have that support system. So my clients are a huge community for me, and they also let me try a lot of things on them, so I don't have to feel like, you know, if I have a new idea, I can actually try it and then
Right.
get feedback, and that is also a huge part to growth.
Beautiful. So, if somebody's already in the Denver area, in Colorado, or they're going to come visit, is there like maybe one or two places that you would highly recommend people check out? Maybe the Denver area, the state of Colorado, that you really appreciate?
Deer Creek Canyon.
Okay,
That's
cool.
where I started out running trails, and when I felt so connected to God and my body and everything. So that's a magical trail for me. Deer Creek Canyon, Kipling and C470. It's a beautiful hike. Really, really great hike. And then, you know, there's so many magical places in Denver, but I love all the local restaurants that we have as well.
Yep.
So Just Be Kitchen,
Yep,
Jen,
yep.
I'll give you a
Shout
shout out,
out,
girlfriend.
yeah.
I love that place. And then also there's a cool place called Archipelago. It's a social club, and they're fostering a lot of community things
Okay.
as well. So
Cool.
yeah, those are all some fun places.
Very cool. Now, is there anything, Jourdan, before I ask the last question, is there anything that that I haven't asked you that maybe is on your heart that you would like to share or put out there?
Just don't be afraid to do the deep work needed, because I guess for a long time I read so many self-help books and tried all of these different things to achieve this happiness everyone talks about achieving, and it wasn't until I was finally courageous enough to actually sit with all of the crap and work through all of the lenses and the filters that I realized I had on life and get to the root of them, which is a messy and very hard process, and I'm still working through it, to where I could finally see these bits of light, and which we call happiness. So just my encouragement would be to, therapy, a community, anything that allows you to work through those things in a safe space. Like, just don't be afraid to invest in that, because it's going to set you up for everything that you've been wanting.
Absolutely.
But also, if it's hard, keep going.
Absolutely.
That's a good sign if it's hard, and not hard in like I'm just going to grind through this next chest press, right? Or to get injured, but hard as in oh my God, this is uncomfortable. Oh my God, this doesn't feel good. And I want to just run away. That's a good sign. And if you can just find a way to stay there and love yourself through it and let other people love yourself through it, you're going to come out on a really good side.
Beautiful, beautiful. So the last question that I have for you today, Jourdan, is what sets your soul on fire?
Helping people understand how strong they really are sets my soul on fire. And every day I wake up, and that's truly what gets me out of bed.
Now, in regards to how strong they are, you're not talking about how much they can lift in the gym,
no.
right? So just for someone that maybe wouldn't understand that per se, just unpack that just a little bit if you don't mind.
How strong they are, as in being able to just show up for themselves. So when I train people and I go into work, it's about providing something in that workout that's going to let them dig a little bit deeper and overcome something they thought that they couldn't. So that's the kind of strength I'm talking about. It doesn't mean a certain amount of weight. It could truly just mean being able to breathe 10 deep breaths.
Right.
Something that they need to prove to themselves that wow, I never thought I could do that, and I just did it, and I'm going to leave feeling so proud of myself.
Right. Breaking through barriers, basically, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so Jourdan, that kind of concludes everything today. Now, before I kind of have my closing remarks, I just want to give you an opportunity to share, if somebody's listening to this, and maybe at some point they've been able to connect with your story on some level or relate, or they're interested in connecting with you to get some training, things of that nature. Where can people reach out to you and connect with you best in regards to social media, websites, things of that nature?
Yeah, Instagram is really great. Jourdan Baldwin Fitness. Jourdan is Jourdan, Baldwin Fitness. Email is also my name, jordanbaldwin@gmail.com, and both of those are great ways to get in touch with me.
Okay, awesome. So, listeners, I just really appreciate, once again, your time spending with Jourdan and myself on the 127 Fit podcast. I know that you guys have gained a lot of great insight and value from listening to Jourdan share her story. There's definitely some really, really cool nuggets to take away. If you guys are interested in reaching out to me, you can find me on Instagram. It's at 127fitness. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. And then if I could just really encourage all of you guys out there, if you're finding value with the guests that are coming on to the podcast, if you're finding value in this podcast overall, if you could just subscribe, share, and then just most importantly, please leave a review, especially in the iTunes kind of Apple podcast app. That's really big for people finding the podcast and things like that. So just kind of try to get out there, put some feedback out there, reviews, things like that. Share it, post it up on your Insta stories, things like that, just so we can get some more people involved in this 127 Fit movement. If you think you would be an awesome guest, or if you have some people that you think may be awesome guests for the 127 Fit podcast, please send me an email. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. And then I'm just really wanting to start to encourage all of you listeners, if you are sharing the podcast or things like that, just start using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. That's kind of the quote. That's kind of the mantra for this whole thing is to live a life So not necessarily people are going to follow you, but just being that leader and that example so somebody can look at you and just say, hey, I want to model my life after that person, just to really build people up and to encourage them. So just start using hashtag be someone to follow. And then per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time until next time, I will catch you guys later.